Well, good morning, church. I want to send a special shout out to Peter. Thank you from April. There's a bit of my message where I'm going to mangle some words, and that already makes me feel better. So that was what that was all about. He's just caring for me. He's just a thoughtful guy. All right, our starting scripture this morning comes from Nehemiah, chapter 4, verse 6. It's very simple. It says this: "We rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart." Now, some other translations that you may have, like the NASB, say, "For the people had a mind to work." And today we're going to be using an example from Nehemiah to demonstrate a fundamental truth that can dramatically change your spiritual life. Now, that's a big claim. And I actually hate sermons that claim too much. You know, those ones, how to be spiritually victorious in 4 easy steps. And you always know them because all the steps all start with the same letter. And they're sermons that promise so much, but generally at little cost. Basically, they'd never say it this way, but they might as well be saying how to fix everything while changing nothing. And that's not this kind of message this morning that I want to give you, but it does reveal a truth that in all my years of walking with God, I have found to be the most predictable pointer to a spiritually mature and fulfilled person. Seriously, if you embrace this one concept, I can pretty much guarantee you this, that you will start to hear more from God, that you will find a purpose and a contentedness that you have never experienced before, and that you will grow spiritually and as a person at an exponential rate. And I'm not going to keep you in suspense, which if I was doing one of those other sermons, I'd leave it right till the end. I'm going to tell you up front what we're talking about this morning. The concept I'm talking about is service. Not a sexy word, not a word we like. But the more we give to others in service, the more we receive back in terms of all of the things I've just described to you. Service is at the heart of every part of the gospel. It is at the heart of everything. If you think about the great commandment to love God and love others, it's remarkably easy to go, oh yes, no, I love God. I love others. I love everyone. I love the little fishies in the sea, and I love the little puppies. Sorry, I veered off into sarcasm. But so often that's what we hear. It's this insipid sense of I have nice feelings towards. That is not love. Love, particularly in this sense, the best definition I can think of is to put someone else's needs before your own. And this means actually doing something. This means it will cost you. That's the whole point of the parable of the Good Samaritan. It was only the person who stopped and actually met the needs of the wounded person who actually loved their neighbor. And this concept of service was also fundamentally and absolutely part of Jesus' mission on earth. We read that in Matthew 20, verse 28. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. When we were in need, when we were lost in our sins, the God who created this very universe stepped down into his own creation as the man Jesus and met our needs before his. That is love. And if we claim to follow Jesus, then that same sacrificial love should inform our spiritual journey. But, and I'm about to make myself pretty unpopular this morning, but is that what we see in the church today? Let's do an honest stock take. Because I think clearly the answer is no. We do not see that. It's oft been said that 80% of the work in a church is done by 20% of the people. I've been in the church all my life, and I can tell you categorically that is true. And to any extent that is not true, it's probably more like 90-10. The majority of people in churches. Now, obviously, no one in this church. I'm only talking about people in other churches. But what they do is they see church not as God sees it. They don't see it as a community. They don't see it as a family that they are an integral part of. They see it as just another thing in this life to consume. And to such people, they measure the church not with Jesus' measure. Jesus' measure is found in John 13, verse 35. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. No, instead, they measure church by their needs and most particularly wants. And so they will say things like, I didn't really enjoy worship this morning. What they mean is this: they didn't play the songs I like in the style I like. Newsflash, worship is not about you. I don't care if you like it or not. That's not strictly true. But look, worship is supposed to be the worship of God. It's whether He is blessed, not you. Now, that doesn't mean we can't enjoy it, and I do enjoy it. But first of all, God has to be blessed. Otherwise, we're doing it wrong. Or they will say something like, and probably will say this morning, I didn't really like the sermon this morning. That was a mean preacher. No, he kind of implied that I needed to change. Don't like those messages. I like the messages about God's love and how great His grace is. Those are the messages I like. Now, of course, God does love us, and we are incredibly blessed to live in His grace. But we need to stop making everything about us. We need to stop seeing this church and any church like we are consumers come to try a product. The more we make our faith about us, the smaller we become. And the harder it is to hear God, because that is not where He is. He is not in that little corner as we're self-indulgently making it all about us. He is nowhere to be found when we do that. But the more we make it about others, conversely, even though we're giving out, somehow we become bigger people. And we find that God is right there. Because serving and giving to other people is what He is all about, as we read in Matthew. Now, since I'm already unpopular this morning, I'm going to make myself even more unpopular and take it a step further. I also see that when people do serve, often they're actually serving themselves. They're simply doing the things they like to do in the way they like to do them. And look, I'm not picking on the musicians and singers this morning. They serve us so beautifully, but it's just a great example, a very easy example. But if somebody loves to sing and play an instrument, if they serve in the worship team, who are they serving? Themselves or the congregation? Are they just doing what makes them happy anyway? And this applies everywhere. But if you ever wonder this, it's really easy to test. All you have to do is give that person some advice that says, basically, don't do what you like doing, do this instead. Or give them some constructive criticism. If they're there for themselves, they will get offended. If they're there for the congregation, they'll be like, oh, wow. So that would be a better way. Oh, okay. So that's going to help the congregation. Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll change. And since I'm being tough on people, it's not just the congregation. I have met pastors who are nothing about serving God or the church. I know, horrific, isn't it? I'm sure some of you have met such people. What they really like is bossing other people around. They like standing up the front and being seen as being big people, and they like the sound of their own voice. They're doing it for themselves. Now, I know that none of us have perfect motivations for the things we do, and I'm not suggesting that we have to. But it is good for us to ask ourselves the hard questions. Am I really doing this for God, or am I doing it for me? It's a good question to continually ask ourselves, because we will always have mixed motivations. We always will. It's what it means to be human. But as a human, it's best if we remind ourselves that God has to come first. Yes, I may be doing this for me, but it's mostly for God and for other people. So enough of hard questions. Let's turn back to Nehemiah, and we will draw some parallels which will help us to understand what it means to serve in the way that God means it. And so our starting scripture describes how Nehemiah and the people in that time rebuilt the city walls around Jerusalem. So let's have a little bit of context. So this, in passages we're looking at in the wider context here, is about the first waves of exiles that came back from Babylon. And we read about this in Ezra and in Nehemiah. And while there are two books in our Bible, many scholars suggest they were actually one book and written by the same author. And they describe the stories of three leaders who achieved different things as they came back from Babylon. First of all, we have Zerubbabel, who rebuilt the temple. And then about 60 years later, in a second wave, Ezra and Nehemiah led the people. And Ezra rebuilt the worship of the Torah, and he kind of built the community. And Nehemiah rebuilt the walls around the city so that they could protect the city. So we're picking up on the last of these three leaders, Nehemiah. And spoiler alert, the end of this book, or books, is pretty depressing. Great stuff happens, and then it has a real anticlimax at the end. And that's because despite how courageous they were, despite the great leaders they had, the great things they accomplished, at the end of it, the people ended up just being exactly as they were before the exile. And so the moral of these books is it is not enough to change our external circumstances. It only matters when our hearts change. Now, back in Nehemiah 4, we are way before all of that. And we're at the time when cool stuff is happening. It's a time of success. It's a time of triumph. And they rebuilt the city walls in an astounding 52 days. That's incredible. And this is why I'm going to use this as a parallel for our situation. First of all, what they did was remarkably successful. Secondly, it was a community project. Now, we could learn things from people doing individual acts of service, absolutely. But it's a better analogy for our situation that this is a community project. Because you see, the Great Commandment and the Great Commission were never meant to be achieved as individuals. In fact, I would argue they cannot be achieved as individuals, only in community. If we are not in community, we can't really love other people. If we are not in community, we can't disciple others and be discipled ourselves. God calls us to build His kingdom, not our kingdom. And God's kingdom is by definition a community. And one of the greatest failings of our generation is, like we've done with everything else, we have made it individual. We've made it about us. So our faith, instead of being part of a faith community, is Jesus and me. And we've just turned it into this individual walk. So, that the community in Jerusalem was rebuilding the walls is very appropriate to use as an analogy. But even more so, because the whole idea of building things was one that Jesus used frequently. And in fact, in the New Testament, we are even described as living stones. So let's turn to that scripture. It's 1 Peter 2:5. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So the mission of building God's kingdom or community can be likened to building the walls of a house. It's just that we're building with people, not stones. And we hear in our starting scripture that the people at that time, they built with all of their heart, or that they had a mind to work at this. They were really into it. And that's important because they were facing opposition. The local populace didn't want the city rebuilt. It didn't want it safe and secure. It didn't want a thriving community there. And in fact, the verses immediately before this one are all about opposition. Describes a couple of people, Sanballat and Tobiah the Amorite, who were leading the opposition to the wall, and they were basically bantering, they were mocking them and threatening them. And this again is a good part of the analogy, because have you noticed the world likes to mock Christians? It likes to make fun of the things that matter to us. Gets a real kick out of it. And we will always face opposition. So what will be our response? In Nehemiah's time, says that the people persevered and then they built with all their heart. In response to the opposition, they built with all their heart. And they were not only successful, but astonishingly so. So there's much we can learn from them. And so to help us with this, I'm going to read the chapter that came before this one. And I was tempted to read the whole chapter, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's really boring. It's a list of very hard to pronounce names, some of which, no matter how many times I've practiced this, I am going to mangle. All right, so Peter's going to have a great laugh, some of these are going to fall over big time. But rather than read the whole chapter, I'm just going to pull out a few verses, a few chunks, and we'll get a sense for the whole of the chapter. So let's dive right in, and before you laugh too hard, try some of these names for yourself. All right, starting at verse 1. At the sheep gate, Eliashib the high priest and his fellow priests began rebuilding. They dedicated it and installed its doors. After building as far as the Tower of the 100 and the Tower of Haniel, they dedicated the wall. The men of Jericho built next to Eliashib, and Zakur son of Imri built next to them. The fish gate was built by the sons of Hassanah, and they laid its beams and installed its doors, bolts, and bars. Next to them, Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakos, made repairs. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the son of Mehezabel, there we go, first one, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, son of Baana, that's a cool name, made repairs as well. Next to him, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work under the supervisors. Love that bit, that the Tekoite nobles were slackers. Jump on to verse 8. Next to them, Uzziel, the son of Harahiah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs. And next to him, Hananiah, one of the perfumers, made repairs. They fortified Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Next to them, Raphaiah, son of Hur, ruler of a half district of Jerusalem, made repairs. Next to him, Jediah, son of Harumphah. It's a great name. I want to read Harumph, but it's actually probably more Haramuth. But anyway, made repairs across from his house. And next to him, Hattush, son of Hashanabaniah, made repairs. Malchijah, son of Harim, and Hashub, son of Pahath Moab, repaired another section as well as the Tower of Ovens. And next to them, Shalom, son of Halohesh, ruler of the other half district of Jerusalem, made repairs with the help of his daughters. That's cool. Means that everybody was working. Normally in that time and in that social environment, women were prevented from construction work, but here everybody was getting involved. Very cool. On to verse 21. Next to him, Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakos, repaired another section from the doorway of the house of Elishib to the end of the house. And next to him, the priests from the surrounding area made repairs. Beyond them, Benjamin and Hashub made repairs in front of their house. And next to them, Azariah, son of Maaseiah, son of Ananiah, made repairs beside his house. Now, if you didn't already pick that up, Meremoth we've had before. So he jumps back into the list. So he did his bit, and then he went looking for more. And so he actually repaired on one side of Eliashib. They kind of started building around the wall, and when they got to the other side, he's like, I'll do that bit too. Very cool. Finally, let's read verses 28 to 29. Above the horse gate, each of the priests made repairs in front of his own house. Next to them, Zadok, son of Immer, made repairs opposite his house. And next to him, Shemaiah, son of Shechaniah, the guard of the east gate, made repairs. And this is a common refrain in this chapter. People repaired the bit in front of their own house. So, what lessons can we learn from this passage? First of all, everyone is called to build. Everyone. Don't be a Tekawite noble. They were probably just hanging out going, oh, we won't do this. We'll just slack off, We're nobles. No one's going to notice. 2,750 years later, we're reading this, going, what a bunch of jerks. So much for nobody noticing. And instead of sharing in the triumph of this incredible thing, building the walls in 52 days, they are remembered for opting out. No work, no glory. But how will we be remembered when our lives are over? In another part of the Bible that uses a building analogy, we read this in 1 Corinthians 3, verses 12 to 15. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, his workmanship, and of course her workmanship, will be evident, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will prove the quality of each man's work. If what he has built survives, he will receive a reward. If it is burned up, he will suffer loss. He himself will be saved, but only as if through the flames. This points out that what we do in this life matters. Now, it's also clear this is not a salvation issue. We'll be saved anyway. We are saved by God's grace, not by our works. But what we do now matters in eternity. To grow, the great thinker, humanitarian, and philosopher, Russell Crowe, in the movie Gladiator. What we do in this life echoes in eternity. Actually, it's not his quote. It actually comes from true Stoic philosopher and emperor Marcus Aurelius, but people only remember it from the Gladiator movie. So, now the Bible agrees with Russell. What you do in this life will echo into eternity. But will it be gold, silver, and precious stones? Will it lead to something lasting and a reward? Or will it be wood, hay, and straw that will be burned up, leaving you with nothing but soot on your face and hands? Here's the thing. You get to decide. Because the Great Commandment and the Great Commission are not the great suggestions. Not like, if you can get round to it, that would be nice. These are the core of our faith, and this is what God has asked us to do in this life. Loving others, discipling others, that is gold, silver, precious stones. Because people are the only things that will translate into eternity. Everything else you see around you, everything you own or ever will own is going away. One day it will disappear like vapor in the sun. But because people are eternal, love is eternal. And we discussed at the beginning, love is serving the needs of others before yourself. Right, second lesson, build what's needed. Don't build what you want. Don't build what you like. Build what is needed. Do you remember from the list of workers, there was Uzziel, the son of Harhaiah, one of the goldsmiths, and next to him Hananiah, one of the perfumers. Now, goldsmiths and perfumers, that was very delicate work and very profitable work. So these would have been very rich individuals. And they totally could have gone, oh, yeah, sorry guys. No, my hands are instruments. Finely tuned precision instruments. I can't be doing mortar and bricks and rough work. No, they got on and built their bit of the wall. And we're going to see a great example of this in a little video clip I'm going to show you before we wrap up. To truly serve means to find what the needs are and just meet them. And if you can bring special skills to that, well, that's awesome. But make sure it's about serving and loving God and others, not just yourself. Now, this next bit, I don't say to shine my own halo. It's just a good example, and particularly when you see the clip, it'll make even more sense. But in my first job as a pastor, they asked me for a list of all the things I saw in my role so they could write up my employment contract. And so I gave them a list of all the things, and then I said, look, I know how churches work. And I said, if I have to clean the toilets, I'll clean the toilets. And so when weeks later, they handed me the employment contract, in bold, the first part of my role was to clean the toilets. In-depth description of everything that was required, products to be used, all this kind of stuff. They meant it as a joke, but they were surprised. I just read it, signed it, and handed it back. And it kind of ruined their joke because they were hoping for a reaction. And then they pulled out the real contract and gave me that. But I could have reacted. I could have gone, outrageous. I have multiple degrees. I have a PhD. I'm a Bible scholar. And you expect me to clean toilets? I could have even quoted biblical precedents. In Acts chapter 6, the apostles were getting caught up waiting on widows. And the rest of the community went, no, this isn't good. No. They need to devote themselves to teaching the word. So let's get other people to do that. However, big difference. It also says in Acts that everyone was giving so liberally that every single need in their community was met. So what they're doing is fair enough. But overall, that kind of idea is not how families work, is it? If I was in my family and I needed to do the dishes and I went, well, sorry, but I do have a PhD, what would be the response? So what? Get over yourself, you moron. Do the dishes. Families don't work like that. When there's needs in the family just meets them. That's the way it's meant to be. We all do our share in the family. Last point, build where you are. You don't have to go looking for esoteric needs in esoteric places so that you feel good about yourself. Just build what's in front of you, what's outside your door. You don't have to look far to find needs. And this is true in all of your life, but particularly true in your church community. There are plenty of opportunities for you every single Sunday. I'd be very interested in how many times you have received communion in this church, given that we do it every week. Has it ever crossed your mind how the emblems magically appear on the table at the back? I'll tell you, a very small group of people in this church give up time on their Saturday or Sunday morning to make that happen. But when you see those emblems, what do you see? Oh, just another thing to consume in the church. Well, in this case, literally. I want to encourage you. Catch what the Bible is saying here. Be a builder, not a consumer. Be a player on the field, not a spectator on the sidelines going, oh, that could be done better. Well, you should have done that. Nobody cares what the spectator thinks. Only the players count. Be a family member in this place, not a customer. And I want to show a short video clip that practically demonstrates what I've just been saying. It's beautiful. Mikey found it, and when I told him what I was talking about, he goes, oh, it showed me this, and it's brilliant. So let's have a look at this clip, and then I'll quickly wrap it up.
If I'm honest, I never really liked the church. I didn't even really like Christians that much. I used to think of it like a package deal. Like, you get Jesus, and so you get the church and Christians thrown. It's just part of the package. And there are some bits you like Jesus, some bits you don't like so much, just like the church and Christians. Used to find that a bit annoying. But I'd turn up the church and go through it. But I didn't really enjoy going to church. And then one day, I was at the back of our church in East London, and someone said to me, oh, we need help to run the coffee team. And I was like working like 70, 80 hour week. I'm like, what? And they were like, yeah, Steve, we really need your help running the coffee team on a Sunday. And I was thinking, I'm a barista, I'm not a barista. Like, I've got a job, I don't need another job to run the coffee team. But I just, sometimes you just can't even think of what to say. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, okay. And I instantly, why did I do that? So I turn up next week, like, trying to get the cups and everything, get the coffee right. As I handed these cups to people, something really changed in me. I found myself, as I handed coffee to these people, growing in love for them. I was like, these people are amazing. Like, this is this extraordinarily diverse community. It's been gathered from across the area. Probably not another place that looks as diverse and integrated as this. This is a miracle. And then even people I found a little bit more frustrating and complicated, as I handed them their coffee, I kind of grew in love for them. And I kind of basically fell in love with the church. And then I kind of went back to the person who'd asked me to do it. I said, we need a new coffee machine. We need better beans. We need better mugs. Like, come on, these are amazing people. I want this to be the best coffee that they get. You know, they're coming to church on a Sunday morning. I got more and more passionate. I started to build a team to serve coffee on a Sunday morning. I sometimes say, making coffee changed my life because I fell in love with the Church of Jesus Christ. I didn't realize why it was special. I didn't realize why it mattered. And as I made coffee for people, I suddenly realized, the church is like the bride of Jesus Christ. It's like the thing he gave himself for. Like, the church is God's plan for the salvation of the world. There's no plan B. And God is going to build his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So, like, God is putting all his eggs in the church basket. And I realized over those few weeks, there's a beautiful thing here. Yes, it messes up. Yes, it makes mistakes. You'll never find a perfect church, but it's a beautiful thing. And I thought, that's what I want to spend my life building.
I love the end of that. That's what I want to spend my life building. Serving coffee taught him incredibly deep theology about the nature of the church and taught him to love. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And this is why I've entitled this message, The Wall That Builds You. As we build the wall, yes, the wall is built. That's a win. But as we do it, it builds us. And that's another win. You don't get a lot of win-wins in life, so we've got to take them when we find them. Because as we build the wall, we become stronger, wiser, healthier. And because we're aligning our efforts with God's efforts, suddenly we're closer to him. Suddenly we're hearing from him. I will tell you right now, you will hear more from God when you're asking on behalf of someone else than when you're asking on behalf of yourself. And it seems like a contradiction. The more that we serve and the more we give, the more we gain. But it's nonetheless true. Conversely, the more we try and grab, the more we try and hold on to in this world, the less we have. It's an oft said statement that in an open hand, you can hold 11 times more than you can in a closed fist. 11 times. And what do? We spend our time in this life trying to grab as much as we can in this life. And what do we find? We end up with so little. It runs through our fingers. The things that we're so desperate for run through our fingers. And the profoundness of this idea is that the more we serve others, the more we grow ourselves, should not be a shock to anyone who has ever read the Bible or walked for a moment with God, because this is intrinsic in every part of the story. The idea that the more you build the wall, the more the wall will build you is absolutely found in so many of Jesus' most powerful statements. For example, Matthew 10:39, whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. And when Jesus repeats something, you need to pay attention. Matthew 16:24-27. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? What can a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in his Father's glory with his angels, and he will repay each one according to what he has done. Matthew 6:33. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and then all these things, talking about material things, will be given to you as well. Are you getting the picture? We're not even out of Matthew. In Proverbs 11:25, it is noted, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And in John, Jesus states this very profound and pervasive biblical concept in the most beautifully clear way. He says this, John 12:24. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. This is the way the kingdom works. When you sow the seed, you give the seed back to the earth. You lose it. It's gone. It's no longer yours. But only then can it return a multiplication. If you hold on to the seed, if you keep it in your hand, yes, you have the seed, but it does nothing. It produces nothing. There is no harvest. There is no multiplication. And this analogy is found throughout the whole Bible, often described in terms of reaping and sowing. For example, Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. So my brothers and sisters, are we sowing? What are we sowing? Are we letting go of something so it can die, so that we lose it in order to return a mighty harvest? Are we standing shoulder to shoulder with the other people in this community, building our bit of the wall? Because if we don't, either someone else has to build our bit. There's a lot of tired people in the church, I can tell you that. Or a wall without a section is not a wall. People just walk around it. Now, I'm not asking these hard questions because I work at church and it's my job to essentially talk this up and goad people into doing more. If you're cynical, you might think, he's a pastor, that's what he's doing. I hope you can see that from the start, my motivation has been very different. It has not been about rallying the troops. If I wanted to do that, I'd just make you feel guilty. It's easy. But I want you to see what is best for you. I owe it to you to tell you this truth. The more you make your life about the self, the smaller you will become as a person. And the more you hold on to the things of this world, the less you will have. And the little bit you do have will end up owning you, not the other way around. I can do you no bigger favor this morning than telling you this. Through loving God and serving others, so much more will return to you than you ever can give. It will be a harvest. It will be a multiplication. And it may not be instantaneous, but it will happen. Crops are not instantaneous. You have to plant them and then wait. And then the harvest comes. So yes, it is my hope that you would choose to serve more in this place. That you would choose to serve like people under Nehemiah with all your heart. That you would discover what that barrister in East London discovered. That when you give out in ways you're not expecting, you get an unexpected harvest. And this is incredibly applicable to the whole open homes thing as well. Exactly the same. Serving those little children, and you will receive far more back than you ever give. So yes, if people choose to serve more here, this will empower this church in new and wonderful ways. Win. But it will also empower you in new and wonderful ways. And that is also a win. So let us serve together, shoulder to shoulder, brothers and sisters working together. So that we get the job done, absolutely. But more importantly, so that we grow into the kind of people that God meant us to be. And there was something I saw on that Open Homes clip I loved. One of the people said, life is risk and reward. You don't get the reward without the risk. You don't get the glory without the work. Let's not be Tekawite nobles. And if you want to find an excuse not to do any of this, you will find a million reasons. I will give you two, the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. Those are the things that grow us into the people that God always intended us to be.